In the quiet suburb of Fairfield, Ohio, August 13, 2011 began as an ordinary Saturday for 22-year-old Katelyn Markham. The young art student was just months away from completing her degree at the Art Institute of Cincinnati. She had dreams, plans, and a future mapped out with her fiancé, John Carter. But that ordinary August night would mark the beginning of a mystery that would haunt her family, friends, and community for years to come. As darkness fell over Fairfield that evening, Katelyn Markham vanished without a trace, leaving behind her purse, her keys, her beloved dog, and a community desperate for answers. What followed was a harrowing search, a devastating discovery, and ultimately, a shocking arrest that no one saw coming. This is the story of Katelyn Markham, a talented artist, devoted daughter, and loving partner, whose life was cut tragically short, and a winding path to justice that would take nearly a decade to unfold. It's also the story of a facade carefully constructed by the person closest to her, a man who publicly portrayed himself as a desperate, grieving fiancé while harboring a much darker truth. Born on November 30, 1988, Katelyn was described by those who knew her as creative, kind-hearted, and determined. Growing up in Fairfield, she developed a passion for art at an early age. Her father, David Markham, nurtured this talent, encouraging her artistic endeavors throughout her childhood and teenage years. By 2011, Katelyn was thriving. At 22, she was engaged to her high school sweetheart, John Carter, and was just months away from completing her bachelor's degree in graphic design at the Art Institute of Cincinnati. Friends described the couple as inseparable since they began dating in high school. They had been engaged for over a year, and John had given Katelyn a diamond ring as a symbol of their commitment. Katelyn worked at a local convenience store while pursuing her education. She was known for her reliability and work ethic, rarely missing a shift and always going above and beyond in her responsibilities. Her portfolio of artwork demonstrated remarkable talent, and she had begun planning for her post-graduation career. Those who knew her described Katelyn as responsible and level-headed. She wasn't known to be impulsive, and she maintained close relationships with her family and friends. She regularly checked in with her father, stepmother, and sister, and had a tight-knit group of friends who she frequently spent time with. The evening before her disappearance, Katelyn was planning for the future, organizing her artwork for her upcoming final project, discussing wedding plans, and living her life with the quiet determination that characterized her approach to everything. Saturday, August 13, 2011, started as an unremarkable day in Fairfield. Katelyn was scheduled to work at her job, a shift she completed without incident. John Carter, her fiancé, had planned to spend the evening with her at her townhouse on Dorshire Drive. According to later statements from Carter, he arrived at Katelyn's home that evening. The couple ordered pizza, watched television, and discussed their upcoming wedding. It was a typical date night for the young couple, nothing out of the ordinary. Carter would later tell investigators that he left Katelyn's townhouse at around 11:30 p.m. He stated that when he left, Katelyn was at home alone with her dog, planning to go to bed soon as she had work the next day. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Katelyn Markham. The next morning, on August 14, friends and co-workers became concerned when Katelyn didn't show up for her scheduled shift, behavior entirely out of character for the responsible young woman. Attempts to reach her by phone went unanswered. Her car was still parked outside her townhouse, but there was no sign of Katelyn. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will bring you more videos featuring the most shocking true crime stories. Around 8 p.m. on Sunday, August 14, approximately 20 hours after Carter said he had left her home, he called 911 to report her missing. In the call, Carter told the dispatcher that Katelyn's car was at her residence, her dog was there, but she was nowhere to be found. He expressed concern because it was not like her to disappear or to not respond to messages. When police arrived at Katelyn's townhouse, they found no signs of forced entry. Her purse and keys were still inside the home. Her car was parked outside. Her dog appeared to have been cared for. Eerily, the only thing noticeably missing was her cell phone, and Katelyn herself. The Fairfield Police Department initially treated Caitlyn's disappearance as a missing person case. However, as days passed with no sign of the young woman, concerns grew. Within days of her disappearance, searches were organized throughout the Fairfield area. David Markham, Caitlyn's father, was immediately active in searching for his daughter. He organized search parties, distributed flyers, and spoke to media outlets to keep his daughter's case in the public eye. He would become the public face of the search for Caitlyn, tirelessly advocating for his daughter over the coming years. Hundreds of volunteers combed wooded areas, parks, and waterways around Fairfield. Despite these extensive efforts, no significant clues to Caitlyn's whereabouts were found. Meanwhile, John Carter appeared to be a grieving fiancé desperate to find his missing partner. He spoke out to local and national media, pleading for her return. In an interview with NBC's Today show, he claimed he was still calling Caitlyn's cell phone daily. "That's all I've been doing is hoping," he told viewers, portraying himself as a heartbroken partner waiting for any news of his beloved. Carter referred to Caitlyn as the love of my life in media interviews and participated in search efforts alongside Caitlyn's family and friends. He repeatedly provided information to police, appearing cooperative with the investigation. As the investigation continued, police searched Caitlyn's townhouse multiple times. They reviewed her phone records, interviewed friends and family, and attempted to piece together her final hours. John Carter, as the last person known to have seen Caitlyn, was questioned several times. The weeks stretched into months with no breaks in the case. The Fairfield Police Department established a special tip line specifically for information about Caitlyn's disappearance. A $5,000 reward was offered for information leading to her whereabouts, later increased to $25,000 as time passed. Community members held vigils, fundraisers, and awareness events. Billboards with Caitlyn's image and information about her disappearance were placed around the Cincinnati area. Her case was featured on national television programs, including Disappeared on Investigation Discovery Channel, which brought additional attention to the search. Despite these efforts, as 2011 came to a close, Caitlyn remained missing, and her loved ones faced their first holiday season without her, clinging to diminishing hope that she might still be found alive. For nearly 2 years, Caitlyn's family and friends lived in agonizing limbo, not knowing what had happened to her but refusing to give up hope. Then, on April 7, 2013, approximately 20 months after her disappearance, a devastating discovery was made. A couple looking for scrap metal in a remote, wooded area near Cedar Grove, Indiana, about 30 miles from Fairfield, found skeletal remains. Indiana State Police responded to the scene and secured the area for forensic investigation. The remains were collected and sent to the Hamilton County Coroner's Office in Cincinnati for identification. On April 10, 2013, authorities confirmed what Caitlyn's loved ones had feared: the remains were identified as those of Katelyn Markham. Dental records were used to make the positive identification. The discovery brought a measure of closure but raised even more questions about what had happened to the young woman. The area where Caitlyn's remains were found was isolated, not a place someone would stumble upon by chance. This suggested that whoever disposed of her body knew the area. The location, in rural Franklin County, Indiana, was approximately a 30-minute drive from Caitlyn's Fairfield townhouse. Due to the condition of the remains, the Hamilton County Coroner's Office initially ruled the cause of death as undetermined. However, they classified her death as a homicide based on the circumstances, primarily the disposal of her body in a remote location. A forensic anthropology report would later reveal that Caitlyn had suffered trauma. The report indicated there were 3 or 4 sharp, blunt force trauma wounds to her left wrist bone. Additionally, experts determined that her remains were not originally in the location where they were found, suggesting they had been moved or relocated after her death. The discovery transformed the missing person investigation into a homicide case. Fairfield Police Department continued to lead the investigation, now with the assistance of Indiana State Police and the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. Following the discovery of Caitlyn's remains, law enforcement intensified their investigation. A forensic examination of the remains and the surrounding area where they were found provided some additional clues, though many details were kept confidential to protect the integrity of the investigation. Investigators re-interviewed key individuals who knew Caitlyn, including friends, family members, co-workers, and of course, John Carter. They revisited evidence collected during the initial missing person investigation with fresh eyes, now that they knew they were dealing with a homicide. Throughout this time, John Carter maintained his innocence. In public statements and interviews with police, he consistently denied any involvement in Caitlyn's disappearance or death. He participated in searches for Caitlyn during the time she was missing and spoke at memorial events following the discovery of her remains. Despite these efforts, years passed without an arrest. The case seemed to go cold again, though investigators insisted they were still actively pursuing leads. Caitlyn's father, David Markham, continued to press for answers, keeping his daughter's case in the public eye through media appearances and memorial events. In 2015, a Texas-based forensic pathologist, Dr. Elizabeth Murray, examined Caitlyn's remains at the request of the family and determined that her death was the result of homicide, though the exact cause could not be determined due to the condition of the remains. For nearly a decade, the investigation into Katelyn Markham's murder seemed to stall. Behind the scenes, however, investigators were uncovering troubling information that would eventually lead to a breakthrough. In early 2023, Butler County Prosecutor Michael Gmoser's office began re-examining the cold case with fresh eyes. His investigators discovered unsettling evidence that had been overlooked or insufficiently explored in the original investigation. One critical finding concerned John Carter's alibi for the night Caitlyn disappeared. Carter had told police that after leaving Caitlyn's home around 2 a.m., he had gone to his mother's house, where he lived, and watched episodes of the television show, White Collar, before falling asleep around 4 a.m. Initially, detectives believed this alibi checked out. They had found evidence on his computer that episodes of the show had been watched. However, when investigators in the prosecutor's office took a closer look at Carter's online search history from the day he reported Caitlyn missing, they discovered something telling. Carter had been searching the web for synopses of the shows he claimed to have watched. Prosecutors believed this indicated an attempt to build an alibi after the fact. Another crucial piece of evidence came from two teenagers who had been in Carter's neighborhood early on August 14, 2011. They told police that around 2 a.m., they saw two cars, including Carter's red Ford, slowly pull up to his home with their lights off. About 5 minutes later, they observed Carter's car emerge from the garage, and both vehicles drove away. The original lead detective had dismissed their account, but prosecutors found it credible and potentially significant. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of a typed poem found in Carter's mother's home, where he had been living when Caitlyn vanished. The poem read in part, "Deep down I love her. You want to kill her. But I love her. She must die. I can't kill her. Yes, you can. No. Yes." Prosecutors would later describe this as revealing the conflict and demon within Carter. Investigators also uncovered a possible motive. Although Carter had described Markham as the love of his life, before she disappeared, Markham had told a friend that she was tired of the relationship and reconsidering their planned move to Colorado. According to one witness, if Caitlyn was to break up with John, it would be catastrophic to John. Additionally, a former neighbor of Markham's came forward with crucial information. She recalled hearing an altercation in Markham's apartment on the night of August 13, 2011. According to her statement, she heard a woman shout, "Stop it," through the shared wall, followed by a thump. On March 13, 2023, nearly 12 years after Caitlyn's disappearance, John Carter was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with her death. The indictment came from a Butler County grand jury following the renewed investigation into the case. The first murder count charged Carter with purposely causing Caitlyn's death on or about August 13 to 14, 2011. The second count alleged he caused her death as a proximate result of committing or attempting to commit felonious assault. Carter pleaded not guilty to the charges, and his defense team maintained his innocence. His bond was set at $1 million, and he was held in the Butler County Jail pending trial. As the case moved toward trial, scheduled for June 24, 2023, Carter's defense filed court papers claiming he had an alibi that would prove he wasn't present when Caitlyn was killed. However, in a stunning reversal just weeks before the trial was set to begin, Carter agreed to a plea deal. On June 30, 2023, in a Butler County courtroom, John Carter pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in Caitlyn's death. In exchange, prosecutors dropped the murder charges. The maximum sentence for this lesser charge under Ohio law was just 3 years in prison. Carter left the courtroom sobbing after the judge accepted his plea. He remained free on his $1 million bond until his sentencing hearing, scheduled for July 18, 2023. For Caitlyn's father, Dave Markham, the plea deal felt deeply unfair. Hours before the court hearing, he expressed his disappointment on social media, referring to Carter as POS, piece, and noting that the outcome felt very unfair. Nevertheless, he understood that had the case gone to trial, there was a chance that Carter could have been acquitted entirely. There was a chance John could walk, and I didn't want that, Dave Markham later said. On July 18, 2023, John Carter was sentenced to the maximum prison term allowed under Ohio law for the involuntary manslaughter charge, 3 years. While Carter's legal team declined to comment on the plea agreement, one of his lawyers stated that his client had taken accountability and responsibility for Caitlyn's death. Butler County Prosecutor Michael Gmoser acknowledged that many people would condemn him for accepting a plea that resulted in such a short prison sentence. However, he emphasized that obtaining an admission of guilt was paramount. To me, whether it's 1 day or 6 days or 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, it was more important to me to get justice by an admission of guilt for Katelyn Markham. Shortly after his sentencing, Carter was transferred from the Butler County Jail to the Correctional Reception Center in Orient, Pickaway County, to begin serving his prison sentence. For Butler County Sheriff's Office Detective Joe Nerlinger, who worked on the case, there was satisfaction despite the relatively light sentence. For us, we knew it was John. Never a doubt. Happy for the family. The disappearance and murder of Katelyn Markham profoundly affected the Fairfield community and beyond. For nearly 12 years, her case remained a painful reminder of unresolved questions and the reality that tragedy can strike even in seemingly safe communities. Throughout the years, memorial events were held on the anniversaries of Caitlyn's disappearance and the discovery of her remains. These gatherings served as opportunities for the community to come together, support the Markham family, and keep Caitlyn's memory alive. David Markham, Caitlyn's father, became an advocate for families of missing persons. He spoke at events, worked with organizations that support such families, and continued to push for resolution in his daughter's case even as years passed with little progress. For Caitlyn's friends and fellow art students, keeping her memory alive took the form of art exhibitions featuring her work. These events showcased Caitlyn's talent and creative spirit, ensuring that she would be remembered not just for her tragic end but for the vibrant, creative person she was during her life. Even after Carter's plea and sentencing, the community continued to honor Caitlyn's memory. Following the plea hearing, Dave Markham announced that a butterfly event, a tribute to his daughter, would still take place at Creekside Park at her memorial tree. Beyond the investigation, the arrests, and the legal proceedings, at the heart of this case is a young woman whose life was cut tragically short. Katelyn Markham was more than a victim or a headline. She was a daughter, a fiancé, a friend, an artist, and a person with hopes and dreams for her future. Those who knew Caitlyn described her as creative, kind, and determined. Her artwork, which she was passionate about, revealed a unique perspective and significant talent. She was just months away from completing her degree and beginning her career when her life was taken. In the years following her death, Caitlyn's family established a scholarship in her name at the Art Institute of Cincinnati, ensuring that her love of art would continue to make a positive impact on young artists pursuing their dreams. Perhaps the most poignant reminder of who Caitlyn was comes from her own artwork. In her pieces, which range from whimsical to thought-provoking, we glimpse her unique perspective on the world, a perspective that should have had decades more to develop and share with others. The case of Katelyn Markham illustrates not only the painstaking nature of criminal investigations but also the devastating reality that those closest to us are sometimes not who they appear to be. For nearly 12 years, John Carter maintained a public persona as the grieving, desperate fiancé searching for answers. He spoke to media, participated in searches, and even continued to call Caitlyn's phone daily in what now appears to have been an elaborate performance. Behind this facade was a much darker truth, a man who had written disturbing poetry about killing, who likely argued with Caitlyn on the night she disappeared, and who ultimately admitted to causing her death. The contrast between Carter's public persona and his private actions is perhaps one of the most chilling aspects of this tragic case. For Caitlyn's family, especially her father Dave Markham, the journey to justice was long and ultimately incomplete. The 3-year sentence Carter received for taking Caitlyn's life seems woefully inadequate to many who followed the case. However, the admission of guilt does provide a measure of closure that might never have come had the case gone to trial with its uncertain outcome. Caitlyn's story serves as a reminder of the devastating impact of domestic violence and the ripple effects it creates through families and communities. It also highlights the dedication of those who refuse to let such cases go cold, the investigators who continue to pursue leads years after a crime, the family members who advocate tirelessly for their loved ones, and the community members who support them. As time passes, Caitlyn's memory lives on through those who loved her, through her artwork, and through the impact her case has had on her community. Though her life was cut short, her story continues to touch lives and remind us of the importance of seeking justice, no matter how long it takes. In the quiet suburb of Fairfield, Ohio, and the surrounding communities, Katelyn Markham will not be forgotten. Her creative spirit, her kindness, and her memory endure, a legacy that transcends the tragic circumstances of her death and speaks to the person she was and the life she lived. The truth, however painful, has finally emerged from behind a carefully constructed facade. For those who loved Caitlyn, this truth brings both closure and renewed grief, but also, perhaps, the beginning of healing.
If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, friends!